For centuries, the records were burned, the names erased, and the languages silenced. The transatlantic slave trade did not only steal people from Africa, it stole identity. Millions of descendants of the enslaved grew up knowing they were African but not knowing where they came from, who their ancestors were, or how to return. Families were broken so completely that even memory could not follow. But there was one thing history could not destroy: the code carried in the blood. In 2026, a quiet but powerful movement is unfolding across the African diaspora. From the United States and the Caribbean to Europe and South America, people are opening DNA test results that are doing what centuries of broken records could not. They are revealing specific connections to African peoples and regions. For many, this moment feels like history finally speaking back. This is not tourism, it is not curiosity, it is the largest reconnection movement since the end of the transatlantic slave trade. When enslaved Africans were forced across the Atlantic, the violence went far beyond physical captivity. Names were replaced with numbers, ethnic identities were deliberately erased, families were separated to prevent continuity. A Yoruba was no longer Yoruba, an Igbo was no longer Igbo, a Mende was no longer Mende. They became property. When emancipation finally came, freedom arrived without direction. There were no maps back to origin, no records to rebuild lineage, and no pathway home. For generations, descendants carried fragments of culture, music, food, spirituality, and oral traditions, but without the full story. Africa became an idea rather than a place. DNA testing was not created to heal this loss. It began as a scientific tool to study genetics. But over time, researchers discovered that certain genetic markers could be traced to African populations with remarkable accuracy. By 2026, this science has advanced far beyond early ancestry tests. Instead of broad regional estimates, African-focused DNA analysis can now identify specific ethnic groups by comparing samples with reference databases built from indigenous African populations. Organizations such as African Ancestry specialize in this work, focusing entirely on African lineage. For many in the diaspora, this is the first time identity has been returned with clarity rather than symbolism. But a DNA result alone does not bring someone home. It provides information, not belonging. It does not teach culture, explain customs, or guarantee acceptance. Modern African societies are not frozen in the past. They are complex, contemporary, and constantly changing. Cities have expanded, cultures have evolved, and national borders reflect colonial history as much as ancient ones. For diaspora Africans, the decision to return raises difficult questions. How do you reconnect without romanticizing the past? How do you return without imposing expectations? How do you belong without claiming ownership? This is where a new ecosystem of reconnection has emerged. Across Africa and the diaspora, organizations now exist to guide return responsibly. Groups such as Africa Agency focus on heritage reconnection rooted in cultural education and community respect. Their work emphasizes preparation over spectacle and understanding over consumption. These journeys are not designed to sell Africa or promise instant belonging. Instead, they are designed to help returnees learn, listen, and engage thoughtfully with the societies they are entering. DNA-focused organizations like African Ancestry often serve as the starting point, helping individuals identify where their reconnection may begin. From there, programs in countries such as Ghana have created structured pathways for engagement. Initiatives like Beyond the Return and the African Descendants Heritage Trail Initiative aim to move diaspora Africans beyond emotional arrival toward long-term participation. These efforts emphasize responsibility alongside recognition. Return is framed not as reclaiming something lost, but as joining something that has continued to exist. What makes this moment different from earlier waves of diaspora engagement is scale. By 2025, more than 1.5 million people traveled to Africa specifically because of ancestry discovery. By 2026, this movement has evolved further. Return is no longer only symbolic. Increasing numbers of diaspora Africans are relocating. Remote work has reduced geographical barriers. African cities have expanded infrastructure. Residency and citizenship pathways have become clearer. Returnees are enrolling children in schools, starting businesses, buying property, and participating in civic life. This is not nostalgia, it is demographic change. Return, however, is not frictionless. Diaspora Africans arrive with different accents, social norms and expectations shaped by life abroad. Africa does not pause to accommodate them. Belonging is negotiated over time. Many reconnection organizations stress humility as the foundation of successful return. Listening before claiming, learning before teaching, and observing before leading are essential principles. Reconnection is not about filling a historical void. It is about mutual respect. Diaspora Africans are not returning to a museum version of the continent. They are entering living societies with their own challenges and futures. The return movement is already reshaping African communities. Diaspora returnees bring capital, skills, and global networks, but more importantly, they bring long-term commitment. Many invest in education, healthcare, and community development rather than short-term extraction. This reflects a shift in mindset. Africa is no longer viewed only as an ancestral symbol. It is increasingly seen as a shared responsibility. Perhaps the most profound impact of this movement will be felt in the next generation. Children born to diaspora returnees grow up with continuity instead of silence. They inherit memory where their ancestors inherited loss. They learn history not only as trauma, but as connection. For the first time in centuries, African identity across the diaspora is no longer defined only by displacement. It is defined by choice. DNA did not create this movement, it revealed it. History cannot be undone, and the past cannot be repaired. But connection can be rebuilt carefully, deliberately, and together. Africa is not being rediscovered, it is being rejoined.